Hey class, welcome to Module 3 mini lecture. This week when we're talking about pre-incident safety. It's one of the areas where we have a lot of control. And believe it or not, I have my lecture notes right here in front of me, and I actually have my own notes on top of my notes. So really, pre-incident safety, we have the most control, and it's broadly broken down into 7 categories. We have station safety, apparatus safety, response safety, pre-incident planning, safety and training, member fitness and wellness, and interagency considerations. So let's take a second. We're not in an emergency scene yet, so we're not having to rush. We have time to think, okay? We have time to plan our station out. Let's talk about station design. NFPA 1500 Chapter 9 actually talks about that the fire station must meet all health, safety, and fire regulations. A modern fire station will have a carbon monoxide detector in it. There was a time, believe it or not, where we'd crank the trucks up and wouldn't think about even opening up the bay doors, or wouldn't have climb event. So older firefighters do have some respiratory issues because of that. Some other things they've gone into. We look at some physical attributes. The living areas, they have to have clear routes of travel, proper lighting, and non-slip floors. Think about how many firefighters get hurt getting up and out of bed, trying to make it back and forth to a call, or just tripping when they're going into the bedroom. The chutes and poles, believe it or not, and that we rapidly get down, now we have to have training on it, and they're trying to honestly get rid of it. I've seen a lot of big push to get rid of the fire pole and switch it to more of a sliding board, honestly. Okay. They want apparatus base, you have proper drainage and ventilation. We talked about ventilation, but we don't talk about the fact that how many of you have walked past standing water in the fire base and not thought about somebody slipping, tripping, and falling over it? Okay. And also it talks about parking for a volunteer department should be sufficient and well lit. Scariest moments I've had in my career was coming out of a combination fire department where we were actually 2 departments in one station, and some of the volunteers physically cut across the apparatus bays as we were coming out, going to a fire alarm more than once. Okay. Ongoing operation for fire station. It's not a one-time event. Think about it. Yearly, things have to be checked. Your smoke, heat, and carbon monoxide detectors need to be checked. The on-duty crew can do that. I want you to think about this for a second. When we go through every day and we're looking at the fire station, we have a responsibility to keep ourselves safe. There's a slide on here that talks about wet spots on floors. Why aren't we mopping them up? Why aren't we pushing that water outside the bay? Burn out light bulbs. You know, how many people have gotten hurt just because they stepped out and misstepped because they didn't see it clearly? And tripping hazards. If you see something in the floor, pick it up. Your mama don't work here. She don't live here either. And when we were in a CD class, I'd have made a bad joke. We would insert it there, but I have too much respect for y'all. Okay, apparatus safety. Think about this. The biggest thing we're riding in, all of us together, is an apparatus. And you've all read reports of apparatuses rolling over, flipping. We recently had one happen in Gaston County, Crowder's Mountain, rolled a fire truck. So remember, the design of the truck has to meet the minimum level of safety. That's just a requirement. However, when we want to make it more safe, remember that we're having to trade stuff in the fire truck. So to make it safer, sometimes we have to give up room for other things or other wishes. Okay. Remember, ongoing concerns for the apparatus. How well is it being maintained? That's a big issue for us. Are the brakes being checked? What about the emergency lights? Do they actually work? How many of you actually came in before, jumped on the fire truck, and just took off and didn't know if anything was working? The pump itself, the transmission, the aerial ladder needs to be checked. Preventive maintenance on other stuff that should be checked, weekly. You're talking about your small tools. Clean the apparatus thoroughly. We should have it clean. Right now, remember, a lot of us were getting our fire trucks deconned after every call during COVID. Okay, we're going to check tire wear and pressure. We're going to back flush the pumps every so often. And your monthly check should be more detailed. Okay. NFPA 1915 also requires that there be a policy for when a fire truck's going to go out of service. What does it look like? If we're not maintaining our apparatus and we only have 2 of them and one of them goes down, what are we going to do? The scariest moment for me was when one of our trucks was acting up at the city of Belmont, and we were at a station that was actually split with another department. We were like, if our truck doesn't crank, if something happens, what's my plan B? And my plan was always to take their truck. But But here's what I want to really bring out about apparatus. We bet our lives on these vehicles. And if we're not maintaining them, we're not doing ourselves a bit of service. Okay. And a lot of times that's something that gets cut. Well, we're not going to do this yet. We're going to wait 3 more months for the tires. We're going to get into the next budget year. Well, if we need them right now, let's go ahead and get them, because that drastically changes our stopping distance. Okay. I also want to tell you, don't outrun your siren. And I'll tell you about that when we get to the drivers themselves. I mean, it's a dangerous responsibility there. Response safety. And we're going to talk about this for a moment. Driving the apparatus, either emergency or non-emergency. A lot of accidents can be avoided. Okay. Your PowerPoint here. Let's talk about the driver themselves. First thing, no road rage. I want a mild-mannered driver. I don't want somebody that's always crazy, screaming, yelling at the lights, yelling at people. So if they're not in control of their emotions, they're not in control of that big apparatus. I want to remind you, waterways, let's just make it easy, 8 pounds a gallon. And most of us have 1,000 gallons behind us. That's 8,000 pounds pushing us forward or tilting to the left or to the right. Do I really want somebody screaming and yelling driving my apparatus? Okay. They have to be licensed. So we just can't let anybody drive. That's one of the biggest things they would bring out. Remember, when they started writing these standards, that wasn't necessarily the truth. Okay. And we're not even going to get into the Class B license for emergency calls, non-emergency calls. For us, Class B license is required to drive a fire truck in the state of North Carolina. Easy enough. The first thing that I thought was really funny in your PowerPoint, though, is it brings up, first area is your legal issues. They want you to be aware of the responsibilities you're taking on when you drive that apparatus. I want you to remember your ethical responsibilities. As the fire officer, my job is to make sure that everybody gets there safely and gets back to the station safely. Your job is to make sure everybody arrives safely. There's no reason for us to hurry up, flip a truck. Okay. Physical forces, they need to understand how the road's going to move. I mean, how the load's going to move in the vehicle and how the road itself is going to react. If it's icy, is it raining? Is it bad weather? Is there times where the captain and the driver have to switch because the captain's driven in snow and ice before and the driver hasn't? There's times when you have to do things like that. Safe stopping distances, knowing how long it's going to take. It always used to tickle me when we were doing an EVD class. Somebody pull up in a smart car and they'd be ready to jump into a 38-foot long truck, trying to figure out how they're going to turn it around, or a 3,000-gallon tanker. That always tickled me to no end. Vehicle maintenance, they need to understand how everything's supposed to be taken care of. It doesn't mean you can change everything. It just means you need to have a basic understanding, be able to do a few things. Okay, they need to understand the department safety procedures. How do they drive? And they need to have safe driving practices. Okay. Now, one of the things I want me to tell you in here is that driving emergency traffic is more dangerous than driving normal traffic. And that's an actual fact. Believe it or not, people freak out when they see those lights. And sometimes we think we can be a little bit more aggressive. And honestly, there's been studies done that if we took the lights off, we could actually get there just about the same amount of time. Okay. Now, something we're going to tell you really quickly, apparatus accidents occur most often between two department vehicles responding to an alarm incident from different locations. Okay. What they're talking about here is the fact that often we'll T-bone each other coming through an intersection we don't know. We can't hear each other. A lot of people think that you can hear the sirens, but nowadays with modern vehicles, you're not able to hear the sirens. I can't. Anyway, okay. Know your policies, procedures, know where the other trucks are coming from. Make sure when you get to an intersection, you stop. Don't roll through it because the other truck could too. Also, if you're driving multiple vehicles through an intersection, each vehicle stops and clears that intersection. Had a situation where a battalion chief was right behind the engine, kept on going with the engine. He got sideswiped. I think it took him about 6 months to get back to normal. He's lucky to be alive. In other words, do what you're taught in EVD and what we preach about in driver operator, okay? Pre-incident planning. Boy, if you're taking my industrial fire protection class, you're probably tired of hearing talking about this. NFPA 1620 is the standard for pre-incident planning. It's to be effective, it has to be done by the first responder. Believe it or not, we should be going out and looking at these buildings. Having a company go out and do all of our pre-incident plans doesn't do any good for us. I'm a big fan of, honestly, us doing our job realistically. In other words, I like doing my own hydrant maintenance. I want to turn those hydrants. I want to know how they act. I don't want a third party doing it. It's the exact same way on my pre-incident. You know, my biggest fear is that always a slack shift we get a building I want. So I'd always go to the fire chief and say, hey, these 3 things are up for pre-incident planning. I will, the scariest stuff I wanted. So I want my people to be through the building. Okay. Target hazards should be identified. So the big and scary buildings. Any building you have a question about that could lead to a loss of life, get in there. Your target hazards, of course, are going to be your schools, there will be churches, any industry, anything where there's a potential for a very bad day where the newspapers are going to hammer you. Okay. Pre-incident plans should be presented, should have a standardized form throughout the department. Should have the site plan, should have floor plans, should have some, you know, reason how you're going to run some of these things down. EMS should also have some pre-incident plan because there's going to be some situations where, for Duke Energy, for example, in Belmont, sorry, I'm having to use something that's not exactly here. There's a 75-foot tower up there. If somebody has a heart attack in that 75-foot tower, we have to have a plan to go up there and get that person and bring them down. Okay. And we need to be mindful. Oh, Rusty, let me ask you a question. Okay, I'm going to be the student in the class for a second. Rusty, most firefighters get hurt at houses, residential. What can we do about that? What can we do about that? As a good firefighter, there's 4 or 5 basic house plans out there. Go out there and study them. Get into the neighborhoods and actually pre-walk some of these neighborhoods as they're getting built. Every medical call is a pre-incident plan. I walk through that house. I'm taking notes mentally. You know, people get funny if you're writing out, hey, I think this is over here. I also know the basic layout of the neighborhoods in my community. Okay, does that make sense? Hope it does. Now, really quickly, safety and training. Let's talk about these certified 1403 firefighters. They don't exist. Let's say it together, like a mantra. There is no such thing as an NFPA 1403 certified firefighter. One more time, let's say it together. There's no such thing as a 1403 certified firefighter. Now, why does that matter? Because NFPA 1403 is actually the standard for live fire training evolutions. That's what I just said there, training evolutions. Those skills are needed by firefighters, but there's more. And in a training situation, it's usually going to be a 5-to-1 ratio for 1 instructor to 5 students. They're going to keep a close eye on them. They're going to be able to keep a hand on them. Now, NFPA 1403 was actually written in 1982 due to the large number of deaths of firefighters in training. There's no need for us to actually get hurt. Okay. So, really quickly, it sets up, 1403 sets forth procedures and requirements for live fire training in acquired structures and addresses what the students need to have, the structures of the facility itself, fuel materials that are being burnt, Class A guys, no throwing of Class B, safety, and the instructor's qualifications. That's it. We get into this, well, if you're able to burn at the college, you're a certified firefighter. You're not. I know I'm preaching to the crowd right here, but the reason I talk so much about this is that I don't want to wake up to another firefighter dying that didn't have all the classes they needed to do their job. The state of South Carolina, there's still plenty of firefighters dying. Firefighter been on the department maybe a couple of weeks, and he was pushed into a house fire by himself and got lost. I want us to make sure that we're better than that. Okay. Members, wellness and fitness. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say this. I sometimes am fluffy. I need to make sure that I am physically fit for my job. Okay. And I need to be mentally well for my job. So really quickly talking about the healthy living for a firefighter. It's addressed in NFPA 1582. It's the standard for comprehensive occupational medical programs for fire departments. Okay. We need a yearly medical exam. Your doctor can sign off on it. Okay. It's just saying that you're healthy enough to do this job. It's a physical examination, the body composition, it's annual laboratory analysis, hearing evaluation. See, now there's the problem. My vision is not where it should be because I should say vision evaluation. Pulmonary evaluations, aerobic cardiovascular evaluations, immunizations, cancer screening, infectious disease screening. Okay. That's at the end of the year, they make a decision. Can you continue? Should you stop? I had a situation a few years ago where I had a 400-pound female attempt to go through a rescue class I was teaching. She made it into the structure to search 15 feet before she basically fell out. She was set up for failure by her own department that didn't put her into a gym first. Guys, I'm from a department where a 24-year-old kid had a massive heart attack, died on a treadmill. I still think you need to be on the treadmill, you need to be running, you need to be doing the physical part of this. We have a responsibility to our friends and family. Now, that's the physical part. Let's talk about the mental part for a few minutes. And I'm not preaching. I've seen so many good firefighters. Or actually, let me back up for a second. We'll get to mental in a second. I do want to talk about a few more things on physical fitness. You need on-duty time for exercise. Most departments give an hour. Make sure that you're doing that. Have equipment and facilities. This is where you can start to make the argument, hey, chief, we don't have a gym, but to be compliant with 1582, 1500 series, let's think about that. Let's work on that. Okay. Now, there's 5 characteristics for physical fitness. There's aerobic, cardiovascular fitness. There's muscular strength. There's muscular endurance, flexibility, and body composition. Okay. Now, looking back really quickly, I do apologize for that. My phone's going off. We'll get to that in 1 second. Once fitness level is identified, a program should be developed for an exercise plan, okay? They just want to make you get better so that you're safe. And that's their whole thing. Now, on to what I want to talk about earlier. I jumped the gun. I apologize. Like anybody else, I get excited about some things. The mental part of our job is so critical, and we lose so many good firefighters. So we have to have support out there. So we should have periodic evaluations. Comprehensive counseling services should be available. Believe it or not, as a volunteer for the state of North Carolina, you do have those options out there for some free counseling, okay? And there's employee member assistance programs. I just don't want to see anybody go out. Substance abuse, we need to be dealing with it directly. Think about it. If that firefighter's head is not in the game, the best thing an officer can do is get them off the fireground. Doesn't mean that they can't come to the fire station. It means we need to get them clear-headed before they start running calls. Sometimes the best therapy I've ever had in my life is coming to the fire station after a bad day. Everybody needs the ability to talk to someone, okay? This is coming from somebody that did have that moment where I was like, oh crap, I've lost everything. And I went back to the firehouse and they picked me up. This is a brotherhood. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat that one more time. This is a brotherhood. Don't push your brother down. Don't make cheap jokes. Make sure you know who to call. If you work for a municipality, your HR service will be able to handle this. Okay? If you have a substance abuse problem, when I tell anybody, if you have that problem, let's go ahead and get you counseling and get you help before the drug test comes. Because the drug test comes, you fail the drug test, I can't help you anymore. Then you have to leave. Okay? I've seen 3 great firefighters so far have to go out the door because of substance abuse and problems like that. Now, interagency considerations, I'm really not going to hit on that much. Some agencies we may deal with, hospitals, emergency response agencies, and local health departments. It's just all being together. It's all working in the same flow. And I'm going to say thank you to that. I want to slide on to the next part. Keep on trucking if that's okay with you guys. Safety at the fire emergency. Let's talk about this. We're talking about safety at the actual emergency scene. We're actually now going to be able to do something that's fun. Okay. What are the 3 priorities of the fire service? Y'all know these. And we've had this debate already in this class. Y'all called it the wussification of the fire service. Well, maybe y'all didn't, maybe another class did. But the whole idea of that we've gone so safety oriented that we've lost the teeth of what we do. I want to remind you the 3 things the fire service does. Life safety. That is our #1 priority. Instant stabilization. #2. Property conservation is #3. And the biggest thing is we're going to risk a lot to save a lot. Okay. Viable people inside that building, I'm going to get them. What I told y'all yesterday, or I told a couple of you in our discussion board, is that I'm doing a 360. And I kept using the term 360. What did I mean by that? I mean, physically, before I commit myself to any structure fire, I do a 360 as the officer in charge. Because guess what? If you always go to the front door and I pull out and every fire's going out the front of the building, I look and I'm like, okay, guys, let's start squirting water on it. That's a total loss. But if I do my 360, I may look at the back of that structure and guess what? There could be people that are still viable victims inside there because some interior doors are closed. Fire's not been able to come across yet. And maybe just really just 2 or 3 rooms in the very front of the building burning and not the entire building. I need to do that 360 for myself. Now, some of you said, well, I'm going to rush in no matter what. I'm going to tell you, slow down. Okay. It's not that it's not our emergency. But guess what? It's not an emergency to us. This is a day at work. And this is what we're good at. What I told you is you have to have a passion for this. Yes. Over time, you're going to figure out where the people most likely are. 9 out of 10 of you would guess correctly. If you're going to find a victim, you're going to find them close to a window, close to a door. We're going to be able to reach in. Most of us could use our ankle, kick it, lock in, reach out and grab them. I have about a 9-foot reach. I can clear most rooms with just my hands. With a tool, I know I can get most rooms, residential anyway. So we're talking about, I'm willing to die to go save 2 twins. That's fair. I'm not willing to die to save your couch. And if everybody's already gone, I'm going to step back and punt. Okay? Again, we're not going to risk our lives for what is lost. We may risk our lives to save a lot in a calculated manner to save protectable lives. And we might even risk it a little to save property. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Very quickly, we're looking at this going through. Fires are divided into 4 groups. We have structure fire, transportation fires. We have outside structure fires, wildfires. Structure fires, most of us are going to go to 1 and 2 family dwellings. And it's the bread and butter operation. Usually it's a kitchen that's on fire. Okay. The example I gave in one of our discussion boards earlier where the fire was actually in the garage, but I think it was a lawnmower or a car. I can't remember now. It was actually what was on fire in the garage. It was a car. The car fire in the garage, extension into the attic. So that causes a little bit of trouble. So again, knowing where it is makes a better calculation there. Okay. Think about how the building's actually reacting. In building construction, you should remember that anytime a building's on fire, it's physically falling apart. It's in deconstruction. It's in demolition mode. So be careful with where you're at, how long you spend. Look at the ridge line, see how long it's sagging. And that's things that you have to kind of have to go to a fire to fire to fire. If you want to know what your physical capabilities are, I'm going to tell you to go to North Carolina Breathing Equipment School. Okay. Personal protective equipment. I want to talk about, and this feeds right into what I was getting into, knowing your limitation. I think it's always cute that they say, what's a 30-minute bottle or an hour bottle? No, it's not. We have now figured out the 30-minute bottle does not last 30 minutes. I like to call it the breath bottle. Okay? A third of the breaths in that bottle are designated for me to get outside the structure. Okay? Does that make sense? The other 2/3 of it is for me to get there, do a little bit of work, and then come out. Now, in the beginning of my career, I was bad. How many of you in this class have sucked with the face mask to your face? I have more than once as a residential fire, knowing that I could make it the last 2 or 3 steps. You know, and especially when you're in a small department, you don't have a lot of help. You're going to be doing those things, okay? I want you to think about your PPE you're wearing. What's the quality of it? How long has it been maintained? Has it been washed? Where are we going with this? Okay. When do we wear full PPE? Interior structural firefighting, no, duh, we know that one already. Overhaul activities. How many of you are still have got everything on during overhaul? You need to. All that stuff's still coming up. It's going to be causing us more problems. And unless we're monitoring and somebody says, hey, it's okay to take your stuff off, keep it on. Okay, in the investigation phase, again, stuff's coming up. Let's keep ourselves protected. Now, again, things I want to talk about again, your SCBA and your pass device should be checked at the beginning of every shift and after every time it's used. At the beginning of every shift, I used to ask a shift supervisor if he had put my pack back together correctly. But I know that he'd probably unscrewed something so he wouldn't have to go inside. I'm kidding. The reality is we need to know that that pack's going to work correctly. We need to know that it's going to operate the way it's supposed to. Check it. Don't just push the pass device to make it actually go off, okay? Gear should be clean, taken care of, tagged, should be in date. Don't wear out of date gear. That's just going to get you in trouble. Sorry, guys. Doing 2 chapters. I had to have my notes out a little bit longer than I thought I was going to. NFPA 1561, Center for Emergency Service Incident Management System and Command Safety. In other words, this is actually our NFPA for command. Hit it. Incident Management System. Okay, here we go. Currently, the National Incident Management System is law. I understand that. It's not a recommendation. It is law. 10 codes are illegal. We're supposed to be doing plain talk. Okay? So that's common terminology. And we're supposed to keep a manageable span of control. We're supposed to know how many people we can run with, how many people we can supervise. Realistically, 5 to 7 is pretty good. I can live with that. It should be used by all agencies around. Again, that's why it's the law. It's tied into all of your grants you're ever going to get. Are you compliant? Okay. Let's talk about the safety officer for a moment. The safety officer of a fire station should be alert to safety-related actions. Okay. Proper PPE, structural conditions, establishment of collapse zones. They have to understand how far out you actually will go in an incident from a building in the event of a collapse. I try to keep my people back a little bit more than some. Should have a good firm grip on accountability and responder rehabilitation. And again, should be stopping freelancing. Really quickly, I just want to talk about air management there. We've already talked about that. Always my question I have to everybody's got an air pack on, how many more breaths do you have in your bottle? Think of it that way. How many more breaths do I have? So the only way to know that is if I go work out with my pack on. And I can't just sit on the couch, watch TV. I'm gonna get out and I've got to run. Some of the funnest training I ever had was playing basketball in full PPE. It really affects stuff, especially when you're playing contact. You also need to know when it's time for you to leave. Don't get tunnel vision. Accountability. Let's talk about it again. NFPA 1500 and NFPA 1561 require accountability systems at an emergency scene. These systems can be commercial. These systems could be as simple as tags coming off your helmet into a cup. Okay. This commander could be holding the tags right now and putting them onto a board later. It could be as complex as something made by a manufacturer for us, for example. All of our riding assignments and radios are, all of our radios are attached to our seat in our apparatus. So they know portable 1s for the officer, portable 2s for the engineer, portable 3s for the firefighter, portable 4s for the firefighter. So then every time you key up, they know who's actually talking. They also know with our passport, we physically put the engineer, the captain, and the 2 firefighters under them. So it lines up when we hand the passport over. That's how we do it. How often should you actually give a PAR report? And this goes through every 30 minutes. That's an okay policy. After primary search is complete, make sure. After fire is under control, yeah, check one more time. No reason to do that. After a switch in strategy, offensive to defensive. After a significant event, such as a collapse, flashover, backdraft. After a report of any missing firefighter. Guys, we don't stop doing a PAR report till the last vehicle pulls away. There were a couple cases over the last few years where the fire marshal was left by himself and had a heart attack on the scene, or an engineer who had driven himself in a volunteer fire department having a heart attack away from the structure and not being found. Okay, it happened to us. Our deputy chief, retired deputy chief, was actually pumping the truck for us at Gaston College during a training evolution and had a heart attack, and nobody was outside with him. If it wouldn't have been for the fact that he had not pulled his handle yet to give them water, he probably would be dead today. Okay, rapid intervention crews. Let's talk about this for a second. Who do you want to come rescue you? 90% of the time, the firefighters on my rapid intervention team are already assigned as firefighters fighting. They're doing rescue. They're physically in the battle. So I always ask myself, who do you want rescuing you? That was actually what I wrote here. I always like to put that there. My big question. Who's coming to rescue the rescuers? So who do you want on that team? I want some of my most experienced. I want some of my biggest people. I want some of my smallest people. But where do I get them from? The first truck coming in can't become the RIT team. They've got to go do their job. The second truck's coming in to assist. And you're going to have to write a policy of who's going to do it. But if you don't, the people that are going to stay outside and say they're doing it are the sorriest ones you can find. I hate to be honest with you. Okay. Rehabilitation. Think about this. For rehab, real quickly. You know, we need to do an establishment rehabilitation group with the incident management system when it's incredibly hot, incredibly cold, or it's been an incredibly long situation thrown out. We're going to do hydration, nourishment, rest, recovery, medical evaluation, some relief from the outside weather itself. In other words, we're trying to get them back into good enough shape to go back to work again. Okay. And nobody wants to go out and go to rehab. It just needs to be done. Okay. Now, combining two chapters, we lose a couple pieces, we gain a couple pieces. I want you to remember, safety does not make you a wuss. Okay. I want you to be a smart thinking firefighter. I want you to be able to take the situation and look at it from how many different angles it can come in. Like I told you in one of your posts earlier, where I said, you know, with video search, nowadays, this part of the house might be gone, but over here, I can come over here real quickly, and that might be where my viable victim is. Do what you need to, but be safe, is all I'm asking. The greatest gift a firefighter can ever give his family is to come home afterwards. And with that, thank you, and I will see you later.